I fully expected your take this morning. I'm going to take a totally different tact. I think it's awesome. I think it's great. I think it's great for us. That's what I look at this as. I don't really give a damn about whether a Nets win or not. Just the fact that we got Kyrie Irving and James Harden on the same team is awesome. That is drama personified. That's everything that we in sports talk want, man. This is going to be, if they don't make it, it's an epic failure. And all of us who don't really care whether they, what they do over there, because we're Knicks fans, and that's a whole nother story to discuss on another day. This putting these players together and trying to figure it out is going to be. I mean, I don't know what the hell Sean Marks is doing. 2 years ago, he was talking about building a culture and creating a team, drafting and cultivating players, and basically all of that is out the window now.
Sure. I mean,
I'm assuming that Joe Tsai, the owner over there, who's probably got gobs and gobs and gobs of money, probably has so much money we don't even know about. He may even rival Steve Cohen for all we know. Is just spending and spending and spending. The interesting thing to me, just from the business side for a second, is I can understand doing all of this if you were trying to sell tickets, because it would be the hottest ticket in town. There's no question about that. But they can't sell tickets. They can't have folks in the Barclays Center. Maybe they will in the next 3 months after the vaccinations and everything, all that. And who knows? But I have to tell you, I am fascinated by all of this. And I know that, Evan went off yesterday afternoon. He's very unhappy about this. I have to tell you, from where I sit and from what I'm going to watch here, is going to be amazing.
Sure, and I can't argue that because we have had a lot of dormant franchises in the local area.
Yes.
This will be exciting and fun to see how it works out. But the way that we got here goes against. Well, see if it works out. But I mean, the way we have gotten to this point, though, is just, it's stomach turning. It's all the stuff that you hate about what's going on in the NBA and in pro sports. It is. Now, I know that we're here and these guys are going to be playing together, we think, if Kyrie Irving ever wants to come back, and that's going to be interesting to watch, but it's just like, this is not the way it's supposed to go.
I don't understand that, but it's NBA superstar player entitlement. There is no question about it, and it just rubs people the wrong way, and it rubs a lot of NBA fans the wrong way. Again, I'm just looking at it from our perspective.
Sure, I get it.
Being the home of the Nets and dealing with all of this.
I understand.
Here's what I will also say, and you did say something early on that I totally agree with. I'm not going to bitch and complain about Kevin Durant. There's nothing to bitch and complain about him. Just watching him last night. He can take over a game by himself, for God's sake. He is so good and so smooth and just it does everything on the basketball court that you want. Maybe he doesn't play, defense as hard as you'd like him to play it, but, he's playing on the back-to-back, and last night he just made it look easy. It was like a practice for him last night. And it just goes to show you, how great of a basketball player he is. And here's the thing. I know that he loves the game of basketball. As a matter of fact, the game of basketball was taken away from him for 18 months when he blew out his Achilles. And, he knows what it's like to have something ripped away from you when, you're right in the middle of something and you're right in the middle of your prime.
Yeah.
And that had to be scary for him because he went back and played and tried to win a championship with the Warriors, blows that Achilles out, and then has to sit out for 18 months and basically becomes bored. And what we saw last night against the Knicks was the player that was playing out there at his height when he was with the Golden State Warriors. He's ridiculous how good he is, and I know how much he loves basketball. I know that. I know that he cares. I know that he wants to be on the court, and that's why he played in the back-to-back. By the way, LeBron played in the back-to-back last night, which is good. But adding these mercurial secondary superstars.
Well, they're not said they're all primary superstars all on the same team.
But now they're secondary to Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is either the first or second best player in the league. You know it, I know it, and everybody else knows
these guys in any other place would be the number one superstar on the team.
But they're not the number one superstar on the team. The number one superstar on the team is Kevin Durant. Now the question is will Kevin Durant, I don't think James Harden will be the James Harden we saw in Houston because he's got what he wanted. But will Kevin Durant continue to put up with the nonsense from Kyrie Irving and whatever nonsense that James Harden brings here?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just that's the thing that's really weird to me. I know Kevin wanted all of this. This doesn't happen without his stamp of approval. But this is going to be really interesting. And this is also the reuniting of Mike D'Antoni along with James Harden. And by the way, I'm watching this Nets game last night. I watched a little bit on ESPN, then went over to Yes because I wanted to hear what Ian was talking about and all that other stuff. They showed the Nets bench. There must be like 100 guys over there.
Oh, sure.
There's like performance people. There's analytics people. There's Amari Stoudemire's over there. Mike D'Antoni. I'm like, what the hell do all these people do?
Well, try not to get COVID because there's a lot of people in there. That's basically what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, I'm, of course, not a Nets fan. And them trading Jared Allen and Karis LeVert doesn't personally affect me like it does Evan Roberts or Jerry Recco. But I had said months ago, and if James Harden had gone to the 76ers, I'd feel the same way about it. I'm just so tired of watching this in the NBA, and it's also gone into the NFL as well. We saw with Antonio Brown going to the Raiders. We saw Jalen Ramsey forcing himself out of Jacksonville. I'm just so tired of organizations caving in these situations when somebody acts like this.
Yeah,
it's just, I don't want to go into like setting bad examples for kids or anything, but what I really want to see more than anything, and I'm sorry to my Net fan friends, I want to see this team flame out epically because, not just because I'm a Knicks fan, because this is the worst example of all of this entitlement we've seen from the NBA player times 10. The other examples that we have seen don't even touch this one because you got one guy who just left and decided he didn't want to play in the interim and is just doing whatever the hell he wants in Kyrie Irving, and then James Harden pulling what he just pulled. They're both on the same team. If this works, that is going to be sickening if this works.
How would you have felt had they traded Karis LeVert and a second-round pick to Indiana for Oladipo?
Oh, I actually would have liked that.
I mean, at the end of the day, they could have done that.
I would have liked that.
They could have done that to get Victor Oladipo because ultimately that's all the Pacers get. They get Karis LeVert and they get a pick from Houston for Oladipo. Think about that for a second.
I mean, look, and by the way, I know we joked about James Harden and the way he looked in his warm-up suit, and he looks different when he has his jersey on. But if you do the comparisons of James Harden a couple of years ago to James Harden now, he looks terrible. And I know that he'll probably get a little pep in his step after this trade, and Kevin Durant's not going to have it, and he'll get in shape, and he has what he wants now. But he right now looks terrible. You're getting the worst version of James Harden he's ever been in his entire career. And by the way, this guy is one of the worst playoff performers ever. Like, if you look at shooting percentage for what he normally does in the regular season, he's one of the worst postseason performers ever.
That's why Biggs wants to play with Kevin Durant. Biggs is coming here, let's strip club. Fact. All right, so, the strip club is going to be doing well. Everything's going to be, there's going to be all sorts of things going on over in Brooklyn now. It's the place that people are going to be focused in on when it comes to the East Coast and it comes to basketball. I'm sure that some of these other teams may make a few other moves to see whether or not they can try to keep up with them. But I have to tell you, you're adding – I don't even know where Kyrie Irving is. Nobody even
Well, is that part of this? So let's talk about that for a second.
I was asking you yesterday. Would you trade Kyrie Irving for James Harden? But then Houston wouldn't do that. Houston wouldn't want to have a disgruntled player because they just got rid of one.
Yeah, but the question really is, was this trade made because Kyrie Irving is a question mark? Is that so? Like, I'll ask you this. Let's say, and there were some rumors about James Harden before the season had started.
Yes.
So it's not like it came out of nowhere. But they died, those rumors. They were gone. It wasn't going to happen. He wasn't going to go to the Nets. So if Kyrie Irving was playing, he was dedicated, he was out there every night, him and Kevin Durant were winning games, and things were going the way they expected, would James Harden be on this team right now?
Only Sean Marks knows that.
And Sean Marks, who could be, you want to go compare what he said, as you mentioned, a couple years ago to where they are now. You could not be more on different pages. Those are two different people talking.
I'm thinking he should run for political office.
Those are two different people talking.
Say one thing and do another.
God.
The other aspect out of all of this, is when you think about it, is Steve Nash now has got to deal with all this. And I don't know what Steve Nash. He's a great guy. He was a great player. He just seems like probably has the right temperament to be an NBA head coach.
Sure.
But think about all the things that he has had to now deal with just in 2 months' time.
Yeah, I mean, and to think that, he had experience as a player. We know that. Experience as a coach is a different thing. He does have Mike D'Antoni there, but it's not like Mike D'Antoni and James Harden are sitting there counting their championship rings. So
obviously Mike D'Antoni had to be a big supporter of bringing in James Harden.
Oh, no, of course. I mean, it does say something to the type of player and maybe type of guy that James Harden is, that both the former general manager and former head coach, those two guys were trying to acquire him. I mean, to play devil's advocate or to give the big story, it's not like Daryl Morey in Philadelphia was like, no way, don't want James Harden. This guy's he's rough. Or Mike D'Antoni was like, we can't touch him. Both of those organizations were actively trying to acquire him. But I just want to
see how it's going to work. I want to see how three guys who all really have to have the ball. I think Kevin Durant is a guy that, and you saw it last night, he will definitely pass the ball and he'll move the ball around. But ultimately, when they need a shot to be made, he's going to make it. But it's going to be interesting seeing these two other guys who rarely play defense, who basically want the ball in their hands, and they're the guys that want to take the shots. It's going to be it's a real chemistry experiment, or whatever you want to call it, psychological experiment, whatever you want to call it, a petri dish of experimentation between three unique basketball players. Somebody still has to play defense. Somebody still has to rebound.
Well,
somebody still has to guard the rim, and it can't be DeAndre Jordan every night because he's not going to play every night.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think, in roster-wise, these big teams that have been built before, there hasn't been one now that's as thin as the Nets are outside of the stars, because we've had many big threes now.
All right, the big three, you pointed out, the Miami big three.
Chris
Bosh was in the middle. Chris Bosh was in the middle.
Sure. I mean, the Celtics.
Kevin Garnett was a guy that is really like the Kevin Durant of this group. Like, in other words, Kevin can do so many things on the basketball court. It doesn't matter. I mean, he can do anything.
Right.
And, again, you saw, like last night, did he even break a sweat last night?
I mean, the Knicks are just, they're in a free fall. He was picking them apart like he should. I mean, but Emmanuel quickly, after the game, and I know he's young and I know we like him and we're hoping the best, but he's talking about how he's like playing in a video game. He basically
should have gotten an autograph.
I mean, right? Seriously, come on. Hey, all right. I know you're a young guy. You just got here. It's cool. You're playing against Kevin Durant. Tell your friends that in a text message. Don't tell us publicly because it makes you look like you're not ready to be here. So that annoyed me. But I'm trying to so the Warriors are the most recent example, which is another team that Kevin Durant was on. So that team had superstars. We know that. It had Klay Thompson.
Green.
But hold on. So you had Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson. But then, after that, you're talking about Draymond Green, who was the heart and soul, who I understand that him and Kevin Durant didn't get along in the end. You had Sean Livingston. You had Andre Iguodala. I mean, you had experienced playoff defense. You had all those things that the Nets don't have. I mean, in DeAndre Jordan, you could say he played a little bit better last night for the Nets. I mean, this guy he's slowly turning into dust in front of our eyes. He is not the DeAndre Jordan that people were bidding for in free agency. When you're talking about the two teams and everybody trying to get DeAndre Jordan and, middle of the night tweets and everything that he was many years ago. Yeah, that's not the guy you're getting. So this roster past those three guys, I know it sounds crazy because you're talking about three of the top five most talented offensive players in basketball. But after that, I mean, it's as thin as any of these super teams are. When it wasn't at the beginning of the season, it was as deep as any of these superstar teams are.
One of these guys gets hurt, they're going to be in a mess. The thing about the Garnett and Pierce and what they did here, those guys were way past their prime when Billy King brought them in here. And he was just trying to open the Barclays Center with their winning basketball team. And he was told by ownership to do it. I understand that. This is different. These guys are all still very much in their prime and still have 3 to probably 8 years left to play, especially if they take care of themselves the way LeBron James is taking care of himself. I don't know if Kyrie Irving and James Harden are going to do that. I just think the body type for a guy like Kevin Durant, he can go for another 10 years if he wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason why it upsets me is because eventually it's going to work. If Kyrie Irving,
think it's eventually going to work.
If Kyrie Irving still wants to play basketball, now that's the big if question. But so the thing you mentioned with the Nets, that's not really a big three. Those guys were done. We understand the circumstances. This is not that. But every time that this happens, it works in the NBA. Give me an example of when it has not. So, all right, the first time that maybe you could say it didn't work was when there was another team that did the same thing that it did work, meaning the Clippers and the Lakers. Only one of those teams could have won a championship.
Right.
Now, the Lakers with Kawhi and Paul George ended up flaming out in the bubble. The Lakers went and won a championship. But, when you assemble, and the Clippers very well may win it this year, but when you assemble and put two or three of these guys together, the Heat, the Warriors, the Lakers, it generally works.
Yeah, but James Harden plays no defense, man.
Well, who doesn't?
And I know these guys could probably go out there and score 140 points a night. I guess, in Mike D'Antoni's offense, which I'm sure is a big part of what Steve Nash is doing. It's run and gun, man. Take as many shots you can get, and if you have the better shooters, you're going to end up winning the game. I just think that Kevin Durant's the wild card. Kevin Durant is the guy that makes the whole thing go. I don't care what anybody says. It's one thing if you have Steph Curry and Klay Thompson that, great shooters. And Kevin Durant opens the court for all those guys. And I saw it again last night. I mean, it's almost unfair that a 7-foot guy can handle the ball the way that he does and can shoot three-pointers down at the basket.
Sure, I know. I mean,
he shoots down at the basket.
I know. He's doing it his whole career. He looks great. He's unbelievable. He's got the right mindset. All the respect to Kevin Durant. But
he's the guy that's got to make it work. He's the guy that's got to push these guys, and he's got to be a guy that also recognizes, he's got to recognize right now that the pressure is squarely on the shoulders of the players. You want it all to be together? Now you're all together. Now, I don't know where you got one guy that's MIA right now.
Yeah, does this make him want to come back, or does it even affect him at all? Like, if he's really dead set on wanting to do other things with his life, then really nothing that happens in the world of basketball should affect it. Right? I mean,
just retire and move on.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, if he was able to walk away in this situation that he never thought would get even more crazy, I mean, when he joined Kevin Durant in the place he wanted to play, he still walked away for a number of days. So now that James Harden is here, does that change his mind? Does all of a sudden basketball become more important in his world? I don't know. I can't figure that guy out at all. But this is what we have. And I can't argue the fact that it's going to be fun.
What a threesome.
Yeah. What a threesome is right.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the red bell so you're notified when we have new content.